Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
Ow.
Stories. Kind of a weird thing, aren't they? Whether you're telling this riveting story about a hero going on an epic quest, or to talk about your trip to Costco, we've been telling stories to both entertain and bore other people for ages. Now, while modern storytelling may seem to be a complex art form, it's really not changed very much. Today I'm going to prove that to you by showing you the basic roadmap that all stories follow. I'm going to talk about something called the 3-act structure. So you've probably heard of the terms beginning, middle, and end. Really, this is all you need to know. All we do is change the words beginning, middle, and end to Act 1, 2, 3, and we have a basic roadmap for how these stories are constructed.
That makes sense.
Now, there are a few things to keep in mind. In each act, there are specific parts and specific points that need to happen. In Act 1, you have two things called the exposition and the introduction of the conflict. The exposition basically tells us this is the world that our characters live in. This is what they're like. Then you have the introduction of the conflict, and this is what's going to kick off the plot and really get the tension going. Next, in Act 2, you have something called the rising action. And essentially, the rising action takes up the entirety of Act 2. This is where our conflict starts meeting different levels of stress. It constantly intensifies. Then we have Act 3. At the very beginning of Act 3, we have what is called the climax. This is where that conflict finally reaches its boiling point and finally spills over into some great battle or somebody confessing their love for someone else. After the climax, we have something called the falling action. After that great battle has happened, the tension starts to fall back down to normal, and then we hit the resolution. The resolution shows that the world has been set back to its normal intensity. So that's our basic 3-act structure in a nutshell.
That makes sense.
Now you're probably asking yourself, well, that all seems well and fine, but that doesn't really prove that all stories are created the same, does it? Well, in order to prove to you that yes, all stories are exactly the same, I'm going to be comparing 2 episodes from 2 completely different TV shows. On the one hand, we're going to have The Twilight Zone, a TV show about strange circumstances and supernatural and science fiction and putting humans in these situations and seeing what happens. And on the other hand, I have Friends. No, the TV show, Friends. Okay. Here in the next several minutes, I'm going to prove to you that the 2 TV shows are exactly the same. In order to do that, I'm going to put up a blank 3-act structure map for Friends here at the top. And I'm going to put another one for the Twilight Zone down here at the bottom. As we go through each story, I'm going to show you how both of them hit all of these points and therefore are the same story.
That makes sense.
The episode from Friends we're going to be using today is called The One Where No One's Ready. This aired on September 26, 1996. It's from Season 5, Episode number 2. The episode of The Twilight Zone we're going to be using is from Season 1, Episode number 2, called One for the Angels. This aired October 9th, 1959. So let's start with Friends. In The One Where No One's Ready, our exposition is basically that we have this guy named Ross, and he is trying to get to this dinner on time to give this speech. Sitcoms are kind of strange because we don't really learn who is Ross, who are these people that are with him, who are all these friends, because it's kind of implied that at the beginning of each episode that you already know all this stuff. So basically all you need to know is that Ross is a smart dude, and he's trying to get everybody to leave on time, but the conflict is nobody is ready to go except for Ross. Now in the Twilight Zone, you have this guy named Lou Bookman who sells things on the streets. We see Lou as a very nice guy. He buys ice cream for kids. He gives them little trinkets. All the kids really like Lou. The conflict with Lou, though, is that death has come for him and told him, it is your time to go. But Lou does not want to go. And so that pretty much concludes Act 1 in a nutshell. Now something you may notice if you ever did find these episodes online is that right at the end when the conflict is introduced, there will be a spot for a commercial break. This has been done by TV companies for a long time in order to ensure that you stay for the commercial because you want to see what happens next.
That makes sense.
Next, we enter Act 2, and Act 2 is where all of our rising action comes. This is where the conflict is going to intensify. For Friends, this is where Joey and Chandler get into a fight about who actually has the rights to sit in the chair. This is where Monica can't get past a phone message left to her by an ex-boyfriend, unable to know whether this was a new message or an old message because she has trouble moving on. A recurring theme in the show of Friends. Eventually, Ross gets so frustrated with everybody not being ready to go that he yells at his girlfriend Rachel, who then decides that she's not going to go at all. In the Twilight Zone, this is where Lou Bookman decides to ask Death, are there any stipulations that would give me an out in order to let me live a little bit longer? Death tells him, if you have any unfinished business on Earth, then that would be a reason to stick around. And Lou says, I'm a salesman, and I have not got to make my one big pitch, my one for the angels. Death agrees to let him live a little bit longer, but he has to actively seek to make that big pitch. Lou decides that he's never going to try to sell anything ever again, that way he can live forever. Death informs Lou, you've made an awful mistake, a recurring theme in the Twilight Zone. Death decides that if Lou's not going to go, he must take somebody in his place. Think back to the Exposition. Lou is really nice to a lot of these kids, and there was one in particular named Maggie. Death decides that if Lou's not going to go with him, it's going to be Maggie's time to go. And Death decides it is fitting to have Maggie get hit by a car. Just hit by a car. Maggie is at home, she can't wake up, and Death is on the doorstep, ready to take her. And Lou decides it's time to try to put a stop to this. And that's the end of Act 2, another commercial break. Now we're in Act 3, and we hit the climax. The climax in the episode of Friends is, upon finding out that Rachel is not going to go to Ross's dinner, he decides that she's the only one he really wants to go. He doesn't care if anybody else is ready. He doesn't care that Joey's decided to wear all of Chandler's clothes at the same time. He doesn't care that Monica has hacked into her ex-boyfriend's answering machine and gotten caught. All he's worried about is that Rachel gets dressed and Rachel gets to go because that's the only one he cares about. To prove how much he loves this woman, he's going to drink a glass of chicken fat.
That makes sense.
Tension reaches its peak. Ross is about to drink the chicken fat when all of a sudden Rachel jumps up and says, no, don't do it. You were really gonna drink the fat for me? That proves you really love me. Because logic. At this point, Rachel decides, I'm gonna get dressed, I'm gonna be ready to go. Ross tells everybody, make sure that you're dressed and ready to go. Everybody's ready, and they all leave for the cab on time, and then we hit the resolution. Ross makes it to his dinner, Ross gives his speech. Him and Rachel are still together, even though he almost drank chicken fat. Now we move over to the Twilight Zone. Lou decides that in order to stall Death, he's gonna sell him a bunch of knick-knack paddywhacks that nobody wants to buy. Death is insistent that he must keep his appointment and meet Maggie on time, but Lou keeps trying to sell him things, and then Death gets very interested. Apparently, Death needs to buy pies. Lou is able to keep Death's attention just long enough for him to miss his appointment. Death jumps up and says, you made me miss my appointment, and Maggie wakes up alive and well. However, this sales pitch that Lou Bookman made was, in fact, his pitch for the Angels. This was the one that really meant something, the kind of pitch that he said he wanted to make during Act 2. And at this point, he's fulfilled his commitment, and Lou says, well, I guess it's my time to go. And Death takes him, and he walks away peacefully, knowing that he has saved the life of a little girl. So I think it's quite clear that The Twilight Zone and Friends are exactly the same show.
That makes sense.